Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And actually, to follow up in this last comment from Mr. Gowdy, Mr. Turley, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the courageous stance that you have taken. In fact, I found it interesting after your last testimony, the last hearing that we had, how much you got attacked in the media. And I want you to explain what you went through, because there was even a moment where you were, actually a reporter who's here today, just went off about the impeachment part of our hearing, when there was only maybe one sentence uttered about impeachment in an entire 4 or 5 hour hearing. Could you go through that a little bit?
Well, there was certainly a lot of anger, and I'm just talking about within my family. I come from Chicago, and a really staunchly Democratic and liberal family, so it's been months since I returned to the House. The fact is, I realize that this is an area fraught with passions and politics, and people feel very deeply about it. Many people feel that I've sort of betrayed folks that I usually work with. And in all truth, even though I've written and taught about separation of powers for many years, I have to admit that on some occasions when President Obama has done things that I liked, and I'll list one, the greenhouse gas regulations, I privately was glad he acted. And then I had to sort of catch myself because I did know that Congress had rejected some of those measures. And what is being implemented is a massive new regulatory scheme. And the fact is, even though I agree with the president in that area, this is a prototypical example of something that Congress needs to weigh in on. And all of the passions that we've seen here is precisely why this is the institution that has to make the decisions. It's not enough to say, I agree with what he's done. And it's certainly not enough to say, this wouldn't have happened if you had just done what the president told you to do.
Which is what I'm hearing here. I've heard Mr. Schroeder say it. I've heard several of my colleagues say that if you would have done what the president told you to do, he would not have needed to act in the manner that he acted. That to me sounds so dangerous. Why do you think, Mr. Turley, that is dangerous for the future of this country?
Well, what I would say to those that I often work with in the environmental field and other areas where I happen to agree with the president, I believe that in time, people will loathe the day that they remain silent during this shift of power. There will be a future president you don't agree with. Mm-hmm. And just as some laws are being negated or delayed or nullified today, the next round of laws may be something you care more deeply about. And that's what the framers warned us about when they said, we're giving you not solutions, we're giving you a process. And this is the all-terrain vehicle of constitutional systems. It has been through everything. It's not a particularly beautifully written constitution. Anyone who says has never read it, it was written by a wonk. You want a beautiful constitution? Read some of the French constitutions. There's lots of them because they failed repeatedly. Our Constitution was written by practical people, and it has served us well. I don't think it's not asking a lot of this institution to pass along that Constitution the same shape that you inherited it.
Ms. Foley, you spoke at one moment about the dangers of the magisterial power. And I don't think people understand what that means when you talk about a magistrate. What is the difference? Why is it dangerous to actually have magisterial power?
Well, I mean, it's basically, why we revolted against Great Britain. We were concerned that we had a monarch who basically could suspend our laws and do what he wanted to do. When you get to the point where the only limitation on the president's, or the only definition of the president's duty to faithfully execute the laws is what Mr. Schroeder suggested, which is sort of a overarching idea of that the president has to act in good faith. I don't know what that would mean. I have no idea how anyone would enforce that. And what that is the effectively having a monarch.
Which is the danger of this. And in fact, I believe, I've been considered a member of the Tea Party. I think the Tea Party rose because there was a frustration with not having spoken up during the Bush years, and many people who were upset, like myself, that we didn't say enough because Bush overexerted his constitutional authority, and we actually stood silent because it was our president who was doing it. And I think it wasn't necessarily an attack on the new president. It was a frustration that many of us had that we didn't say enough, and I think that's why many of us are saying something now. One last question for Ms. Foley and Mr. Turley. Can you please explain, because I've heard again and again prosecutorial discretion, and apparently there seems to be a misunderstanding of what prosecutorial discretion is. It seems to be just if the administration decides, the people on the other side seem to think that if the administration just decides there's 3 or 4 things that they have to comply with, then that's prosecutorial discretion. That's not the way I understand it.
It's not the way I understand it either, because think about what the president has done in the DREAM Act situation, right? He's created a whole new category of people who are not deportable. And basically what this is, it operates as a blanket waiver for these particular people. And I believe it was Congressman Gutierrez, when he was here earlier, he was the one who made the point that,
right,
you know, this is a case-by-case adjudication. Well, it's only case-by-case if by case-by-case what you mean is that the president's people are checking to make sure that the president's boxes are checked. That is not what most people mean when they talk about prosecutorial discretion.
Mr. Turley.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And my problem with the argument of prosecutorial discretion is that when I listen to the arguments, my question is, if that's prosecutorial discretion, what is not prosecutorial discretion? It would seem like everything would be prosecutorial discretion. Now, we can call a raven a writing desk. We can use whatever terms we want. But I can't see how what is clear acts of circumvention of Congress can simply be forgiven in the name of prosecutorial discretion.
Thank you very much. I yield back my time.